My hand found the shutter as the stretcher lurched in the lane, and the firing came from behind us. Through the lens, I saw the mistake forming, clean and undeniable, before any report could soften it. I lowered the camera because the orders wanted certainty and the system wanted silence. The moment passed unrecorded, and it stayed with me like a blank frame. 17th of June, 1944. Normandy, northern France. The Allied lodgement on the coast is still young. The front is uneven. Hedgerows cut the fields into small rooms of earth and leaf. German artillery reaches forward roads by map and habit. American infantry regiments push inland in short advances. Supply moves by narrow lanes. Messages travel by runner, radio and wire that is repaired every night. Within this system, a small number of men carry cameras instead of rifles. They are not tourists, they are not independent journalists, they are assigned to record. Their work is intended for reports, training and public information. They move with units and depend on them for protection. They carry film, captions and orders as carefully as any other equipment. On that day, one of them works at battalion level. He is a field photographer attached through the official channels. His role is practical. He must show what terrain looks like. He must capture enemy positions when possible. He must document equipment, procedures and effects. He must do it without revealing more than censors will allow. He must do it while trying not to become another casualty. He begins the morning as most mornings begin, with a check of his kit, a camera body, spare lenses, film in sealed containers, a notebook for captions, a small card with guidance on what is restricted, a helmet that does not fit well over the strap of the camera. He is not with the first wave of an assault. He is positioned where the army expects activity, close enough to see and record, far enough that his presence is tolerated by line officers. Officers want evidence of progress, they also fear images that suggest disorder. The photographer understands both pressures. He has learned to work without asking for much. The battalion has a routine. A company goes forward to probe a line of hedgerows. Another company waits to pass through. Mortar teams adjust their tubes by ear and brief observation. A forward observer tries to keep artillery on call. A radio operator checks the batteries and listens for the net. The photographer watches these ordinary movements. He frames a picture of men moving in single file along a ditch. He records a platoon leader pointing toward a gap in the hedge. He photographs a bulldozer pushing earth to widen a lane. He writes captions quickly. Time, place, unit if he can confirm it, short description. The operational problem appears gradually, as it often does. In Normandy, the problem is not only enemy fire, it is identification. The landscape hides everyone. A hedgerow can conceal a machine gun a few meters away. A tank can be present and still be unseen. Smoke and dust make recognition uncertain. Maps are imperfect, units overlap. Firing lanes cross without anyone intending them to. By late morning, the battalion's forward elements are held up. A German position has been found but not fully fixed. Small arms fire runs low and flat from the far side of a hedge. A machine gun is moving between gaps. Mortars answer, then stop, then answer again. The battalion commander wants a clearer picture. He wants to know where the gun is. He wants to know what is blocking the next field. The photographer is asked for what he has seen, not for his opinion, for his observation. He is a witness with a tool that feels authoritative. He can sometimes capture what a hurried report cannot. A picture can show a fold in the ground. It can show a lane that a map did not. It can show a stand of trees that might hide a weapon. He moves forward with a small group. A runner, a radio man, a junior officer who is trying to find the edge of the enemy position. They keep low, they wait for pauses in firing. They cross one field at a time, they stop at each hedge, they listen. They look for the faint signs that the front leaves behind. At the next hedgerow, they find early signs of failure and limitation. A section has become separated. A message has not arrived. A map reference is being argued over in whispers. A man is wounded and lying in a shallow scrape attended by a medic. The medic's hands move with practiced speed. Bandage, morphine if ordered. Check breathing. The photographer looks, then points the lens elsewhere. He has been briefed about morale and censorship. He has also learned the unspoken expectations of units in stress. Men will accept a camera when it shows competence and purpose. They will resent it when it lingers on suffering. A camera can feel like judgment. It can also feel like theft. He works quickly. He avoids faces when possible. He tries to show the work, not the pain. The push resumes. A squad finds a gap. They move through. Gunfire rises. A mortar round lands too close and throws earth onto helmets. Someone calls a correction, the radio crackles, words are clipped. The battlefield is noisy, but not in a theatrical way. It is noisy like machinery under strain. Then the day produces the kind of moment that forces choices. Not a heroic tableau, not a clear victory, a small sharp incident inside a system built on procedure. A group of men emerges from a lane behind the line. They are carrying something on a door used as a stretcher. The photographer sees it before he understands it. A door, hands under the edges, boots stepping in uneven rhythm, a face turned away. The officer beside him says only a few words. Make room, no rank in the voice, just urgency. A second later, another sound arrives. Not the enemy's gun, a familiar weapon fired from the wrong direction. A burst, short, then a shout, then a sudden pause as men decide what happened. The door tilts, the stretcher party stumbles, someone falls, a man grabs the edge and keeps it from dropping. The scene is chaotic in the most ordinary way. No one is performing, everyone is reacting. The photographer's hand moves by habit. He lifts the camera, he finds focus. He has done this before in training, he knows how to work without thinking. Film advances, finger takes up pressure. At the edge of his frame he recognizes the source of the burst. A friendly position, a squad that believed it was firing at a moving enemy. A misidentification inside hedgerows. A brief error, and then the reflex to stop. Someone is already yelling for ceasefire, someone is already pointing, trying to correct. The stretcher party has been hit, not by enemy furto, by friendly bullets that arrived without intention. The casualty on the door is jolted again. The men carrying him are struck by the added burden of confusion. The incident is short, but it contains a kind of truth the army does not like to preserve. The photographer holds the camera to his eye. He can capture it. A clear image, the wrong fire, the wrong direction, the door used as stretcher, the faces of men realizing what has occurred. In that instant, he lowers his camera. He does not take the picture. The decision is not a speech. It is not a moral declaration. It is a movement lasting a second. It comes from several forces at once, Pew. He knows the regulations. He knows that images can be restricted. He knows that the army controls what will be released. He also knows how photographs travel inside the institution. A negative can become an exhibit in a board of inquiry. A picture can become proof used to assign blame. It can be used against individuals who had no chance to defend themselves. It can harden opinions before a full account is heard. He is also standing among men who must keep fighting together. These are not strangers in a distant city. They are men in the same lanes and fields every day. A photograph of friendly fire does not only record an error. It can poison trust. It can turn grief into accusation. It can turn a battalion into separate camps. There is another factor. He has seen what happens to photographers who are perceived as seeking scandal. Access narrows. Escorts become unavailable. Film is lost in administrative ways. A camera can be treated as a liability. He will not be able to do his job at all if he is pushed away from the line. So he lowers the camera. He watches instead. He writes in his notebook later, in controlled language. Incident during movement. Confusion in lane. Casualties taken. No mention of direction. No mention of who fired. A record that can fit inside official categories. The problem escalates through the afternoon, not because of that one burst alone, because the conditions that produced it are still present. The hedgerows remain, the lines remain uncertain. Units continue to overlap. Men are tired. Replacements do not yet know voices and habits. Radio nets are crowded. Dust and hoe keep distances ambiguous. The battalion continues to probe. A tank is called forward and then held back by a narrow lane. Engineers mark a suspected mine area with tape. Artillery drops smoke on a hedge line, then lifts. A platoon moves too early and draws fire. A runner arrives with a message that is already outdated. The photographer keeps working. He photographs the terrain. He records the tank stopped by the lane. He captures engineers with wire cutters and probing rods. He takes an image of a radio operator bent over a set, mouth close to the handset. He avoids certain scenes without making it obvious. Repeated losses accumulate without clear narrative. A man disappears into a ditch, not dead, just out of sight, evacuated later. A squad returns with fewer men and no explanation given in public. A section leader is wounded, and the platoon reorganizes without ceremony. No one has time for speeches. The day is a sequence of tasks interrupted by danger. In the evening, the battalion holds a line. Not far, not stable, but held. Orders come down for a renewed push the next day. The photographer returns to a rear point where film can be handled. The routine becomes administrative. Film is not simply kept in a pocket. It is accounted for, it is labelled, it is shipped or carried to processing units. Censors review prints, captions are checked, some images are restricted immediately. Others are released for internal use only. Very few are intended for the public. Here, doctrine meets reality in a quieter form. The institution wants photographs that support understanding and morale. It wants images that show competence, endurance, progress. It has less use for images of confusion that do not teach a clear lesson. Friendly fire is not useful to public information. It is also difficult to explain in a caption. A photograph can show what happened without showing why. That is a danger to a system that depends on controlled interpretation. The photographer's negatives from that day show many things. Men in hedgerows, engineers at work, a lane crowded with movement, a tank halted by terrain, a medic at the edge of the frame never centered. No photograph shows the door stretcher stumbling under friendly fire. No image captures the moment of recognition. Nothing fixes it visually. A week later, the broader battle moves. The lodgement expands. More villages are taken. More hedgerows are crossed. The flow of operations becomes a stream of dates and map references. Battalions are shifted. Units are reorganized. Losses are recorded in lists. Causes are summarized in reports. In that process, the incident becomes a line item. It exists in paperwork as a type of event. Accidental firing. Misidentification. Fog of war. Words that are accurate in a narrow sense. Words that also smooth the edges. The photographer continues with the army. His work moves with the front. He photographs other days that are clearer in purpose. A bridge repaired, a supply column, a captured gun, a briefing in a barn. These images will appear in unit histories, training materials, sometimes in newspapers, but the day in June remains incomplete in the visual record. Not because no one saw it, many men saw it. Some carried the wounded, some fired and then stopped, some shouted corrections, some looked away. Yet without a photograph, the event does not become part of the public memory in the same way. It cannot be easily placed into a narrative of operations. It remains local, private and hard to cite. This is where the gap begins to matter, because in modern armies, images do more than illustrate. They shape what is remembered, they shape what can be proven, they shape what appears in official histories written later. In the months that follow, the institution builds its record. After action reports are compiled, maps are updated, photographs are selected for best representation. Some are used to teach, some are used to reassure, some are used to honour. When historians later assemble the story of the hedgerow fighting, they rely on what is preserved. Written reports, interviews, unit diaries, photographs that show typical scenes, they can describe the confusion of close terrain. They can cite friendly fire as a known problem, but they rarely have one specific, widely circulated image that forces the viewer to confront it. In the public space, absence has consequences. If there is no image, there is less pressure to discuss. If there is no photograph, the topic remains abstract. It becomes a sentence in a chapter, not a moment with faces and movement. The institution is not required to answer questions posed by a picture. It can keep the matter within administrative language. The photographer's choice, made in a second, aligns with this. He did not create an exhibit that would demand explanation. He did not create a print that could be copied and circulated. He reduced the chance that one brief failure would become the battalion's defining memory. He also reduced the chance that the human cost of that failure would be seen beyond those present. This is not unique to Normandy. Across the Second World War, official photography operated inside limits. Those limits were legal, political, and practical. Cameras were tools of record and tools of messaging. They moved with armies that needed cohesion. They served institutions that needed legitimacy. They worked under censorship in every major combatant nation. In the United States and Britain, official photographers had guidance about security and morale. They documented victories, equipment, and the nature of the enemy. They also documented losses, but often with restraint. In the Soviet Union, photography was often tied directly to state narrative. Images were selected to represent sacrifice and endurance in prescribed ways. In Germany, propaganda services tightly managed what was shown to sustain confidence. In all cases, the camera was not neutral. Not because photographers were dishonest by nature, because the context of war makes neutrality difficult. A photographer is embedded in a hierarchy. Film can be seized, captions can be rewritten, prints can be suppressed, a photographer can be reassigned. Even without explicit pressure, the system shapes what is possible. The Normandy photographer's decision fits into a known pattern. Photographers sometimes avoided images that would humiliate units. They sometimes avoided images that would reveal incompetence. They sometimes avoided images that would cause families at home to question leadership. They sometimes avoided images out of personal decency. Sometimes they avoided images because the moment felt wrong to capture. Sometimes they avoided images because a superior had made expectations clear without orders. The consequences for authority and doctrine become sharper later, when inquiries and narratives are formed. Within armies, friendly fire is investigated when it has operational impact. Sometimes it triggers formal boards. Sometimes it is handled quietly to preserve morale. Often it is explained in terms of confusion and friction rather than individual fault. This can be fair in many cases. It can also conceal patterns that should be addressed. If an image had existed, it might have influenced the tone of inquiry. A photograph can highlight how close positions really were. It can show the narrowness of a lane. It can show how easily silhouettes could be misread. It can also push leaders to avoid euphemisms. A picture can make denial harder. Without the image, the inquiry, if any, stays within text. Text can be shaped more easily. Text can omit small details that carry moral weight. Text can reduce a human scene into categories. The system is comfortable with categories. It runs on them. As the war continues, official histories are built not only from truth, but from what is legible. Legibility favours what can be organised. A staged demonstration photograph can be labelled cleanly. A typical patrol photo can be captioned with confidence. A messy incident cannot. So the institution tends to elevate the clean image. This is where the image he didn't take meets official history. Because official history is not only what happened, it is what was recorded, preserved, selected, and repeated. It is what appears in publications, training manuals, and commemorations. It becomes the baseline for later understanding. It shapes what viewers assume the war looked like. In the post-war years, armies and governments publish photographic collections. They aim to show the scale of operations and the nature of sacrifice. They also aim to justify choices. They show the line advancing. They show the enemy captured. They show damaged towns and repaired bridges. They show graves and memorials. They show hardships and endurance. Friendly fire appears rarely as a visual subject. It exists in memoirs, in private letters, in veterans' recollections. But without strong, widely distributed images, it remains a topic with less cultural force. The public understands it as a possibility. It does not always understand it as a recurring feature of certain conditions. The photographer, if asked later, could explain his moment. He might say he did not think it would be useful. He might say he feared it would harm men who had already suffered. He might say it would become evidence used unfairly. He might say he could not bring himself to take it. He might simply say he lowered his camera. His reasons may have been mixed. Human decisions often are. The institutional response to such decisions is subtle. Photographers who produce images that fit needs are rewarded with access. Their work circulates. Their captions are kept. Their negatives are preserved and archived. Photographers who produce images that complicate narratives can be teen-lined. Sometimes politely, sometimes with silent administrative pressure. Even when no one says do not photograph that, the effect can be the same. Over time, the absence becomes permanent. Archives contain what was kept. Researchers find what was filed. Publications draw from those collections. The missing image never enters the loop. A different image becomes representative instead. For Normandy hedgerow fighting, representative images often show determination. Men pressed against hedges, tanks nosed into lanes, engineers clearing obstacles. These are true. They also suggest control and purpose, Dior. They do not show the sharp internal friction that sometimes breaks out under stress. When the war ends, the photographer returns to civilian life or continues service. Like many in the military bureaucracy, he carries memories that are not visible in public record. His official work may be praised as documentation. His personal recollection includes the moments he did not document. Those moments can be heavier than the ones he did, not because they were dramatic, because they were morally difficult and administratively inconvenient. The quiet legacy of his decision is not a single outcome. It is an influence on what later generations see. It affects which scenes become iconic. It affects which topics become central. It affects how the war is imagined by those who did not live it. A war without images of internal error can appear cleaner than it was. A war documented primarily through successful actions can appear more orderly. This can lead to misunderstandings about what combat really demands. It can also lead to unfair judgments of those who fought under uncertainty. The absence cuts in multiple directions. The photographer did not prevent friendly fire by lowering his camera. He did not cause it either. He made a choice about representation. He shaped a small part of the historical record by omission. In doing so, he participated in a broader pattern, the way institutions prefer certain kinds of truth to others. Later historians, when they seek a complete account, must work around such absences. They read diaries and letters. They compare after-action reports with medical logs. They interview survivors. They look for patterns in language that suggest discomfort. They note when official summaries are vague. They look for the events that remain described but unseen. This is slow work. It does not produce a single photograph to place on a page. It produces understanding but not always visibility. That is the cost of the missing image. In Normandy, the battalion continued. It took ground and lost men. It learned to coordinate fields of fire more carefully. It adjusted recognition signals. It improved procedures for moving stretcher parties and marking lanes. These adaptations were practical and incremental. They were built from experience, including mistakes. Yet the public picture of the campaign remained dominated by other scenes. Not because they were false, because they were available, because they could be shown without complex explanation, because they fit into the official language of progress and sacrifice. The photographer's lowered camera becomes, in hindsight, a small example of how war is remembered, not only by what is captured, by what is allowed, by what is chosen, by what is quietly left out. It is easy to imagine that official history is simply the sum of records. In reality, it is filtered. Filtered by security, filtered by morale, filtered by politics, filtered by practical limits of film and time, filtered by the instincts of individuals working within authority. A field photographer in June in 1944 could not control the story of Normandy, but he could control a frame. In one frame, he chose not to expose the film. That choice removed a sharp piece of evidence from the archive. It left later accounts to rely on words. It allowed a safer representative image to stand in the public imagination. There is no need to make him a hero or a villain. He was a working specialist in an army at war. He made a decision under pressure, guided by training, risk, and human restraint. The result was not a dramatic revelation. It was a gap. Gaps are common in wartime records. They become visible only when someone looks closely. The story of that missing photograph is therefore also a story of method. How historians know what they know, how they handle absence, how they interpret silence, how institutional needs shape memory. When viewers see a clean representative wartime photograph, it is worth remembering the unseen scenes around it. The camera points one way and not another. The archive keeps one negative and not another. The official caption defines what is important, and sometimes the most revealing moment is the one that never became an image. If you want more restrained, historically grounded stories about overlooked roles and the records they left behind, subscribe and continue with the channel.